Jimmy Svensson was a real friend who did what good friends are expected to do for each other, while too many people prefer to act like an ostrich and stay away from such problems. He called me and suggested we meet at a cafe after our jobs that very day. Of course, I accepted his invitation, and as soon as we were seated, he said, "Martin, the good husband tends to be the last to know this kind of news, which is why I have to ask you, do you know about Rosemarie's boyfriend on the web?" I choked on my coffee before I could reply. "No, not at all. That's a total surprise for me. Do you know further details?" Jimmy continued, "I'm sorry, really sorry indeed. But in my opinion, it's better to know such matters and act as soon as possible. If you let it go too far, it might end up putting your health at risk from a cheating spouse, as it did for one poor guy at my job. I don't know for sure if Rosemarie has already been intimate with her internet lover before their next date, but I doubt it, which means you might still be able to intervene if you want." That got me both angry and curious, so I asked, "How do you know about Rosemarie's cheating?" Jimmy replied, "As you might know, the company where my wife Christina used to work went bankrupt, so she got a temporary job at a secretary service company and was hired out for a few days to that office where your wife works. She hasn't talked with Rosemarie, but one day during lunch, the regular girls at her table began to talk about online dating. Though it was obvious that all of them had wedding or engagement rings, two of them were into online dating and did their best to convince the third, who wasn't sharing their whole idea of having some fun to spice up life. At first, Christina didn't care much about their talk, but got interested when one of the daters said, "Everybody is doing it nowadays. Even that pretty Rosemarie Palmwald, who's never been involved with anyone at a Christmas party, is online dating and has booked a room at a hotel for next Friday." They even knew the hotel and had some opinions about whether it was a good or bad choice. Jimmy said, "Christina knows that I have a friend by the name of Palmwald, so she told me what she knew and said it was up to me to do what I found to be best with that information." Now I knew for sure that Jimmy had told me the cruel truth because Rosemarie had told me a few days ago about her plans to go away that Friday for a party with a girl gang that used to have a good time when they met during their seminars. Jimmy did his best to convince me that any kind of violence had to be out of the question because a cheating spouse wasn't worth it. He gave some suggestions about what I ought to do, and before we parted, I thanked him and agreed to keep it between the two of us. Even his wife had to be out of it from now on. I had two options: act immediately without any evidence at all, or use the 8 days until her departure Friday for collecting evidence. No matter what she would choose to do, I had no legal right to stop her from going to her date if she decided to go for it. My only legal option was a divorce, but I had something else in mind. I decided to wait until Friday. Both Rosemarie and I, Martin Palmwald, are 38 years old. We met and married 13 years ago, and today we are a typical Scandinavian small-town family with 2 daughters, Lena 9 and Moa 7 years old, a house, 2 cars, and a small dog. Rosemarie is a rather pretty woman for her age, just like most of her friends and co-workers. I would say rather average. The only difference is that she sometimes dresses with slightly better taste than the others, which in some ways makes her visible in the bunch when she's together with others of her age. Of course, nobody is perfect, not even Rosemarie. Her weak point was intimacy. Not that she ever denied me regular relations, and she even enjoyed herself during most of our encounters. But making love, in her opinion, meant only the most conventional position, and everything else was regarded as something that only deviants did. Therefore, it had been totally out of the question for me to suspect Rosemarie of cheating. If a bookie had taken a bet on that, no doubt I would have dared to put big money on no. Back home, I didn't do anything that evening, but the next day, I took a half-day off after lunch and went home searching for evidence. Rosemarie and I had identical laptops, and as I had assisted her when setting it up and knew her password, it was a piece of cake to log in. Then I looked at her Gmail and saw that she had opened a new Gmail account, which I couldn't open. While using a PC, the number of passwords tends to be rather many, and as it is advised to have different passwords for every account, they would be completely impossible to remember without some kind of written backup. Therefore, I had invented a simple but useful system that I shared with Rose Marie. It was thrilling seconds before I would find out if she had used a password of her own that would be impossible for me to break, or had she thought that I, who had never been jealous since we met, would never suspect her of anything like that and chose the easy way. Already my third attempt gave me a bingo and provided me with one of the worst days in my entire life. I downloaded everything to a memory stick and, after an investigation that didn't yield any further information, closed down her laptop. First, I looked at the enclosed picture files. He had sent her a picture of him standing at some southern beach. A rather well-built, well-tanned blonde guy who obviously spent some time in a gym and probably got some further help from those supplements common at such places. My guess of his age was early or mid-30s. A real prototype of a ladies' man. Rose Marie had sent him a revealing picture of herself in black-laced undergarments standing beside our bedroom window. A real good picture in perfect light indeed, which made her look much younger than her 38 years. I had to admire her skills with our new digital camera and tried to guess what she had used as a tripod. As expected, the camera didn't show any traces left after her photo session. Reading the messages wasn't pleasant at all. They had obviously met during a one-day seminar where they had a pleasant lunch and agreed to keep in touch via email. Their first ones were completely innocent, but slowly got nastier over time. It was obvious that they had not met since the seminar, and their date next week would be their first chance to be together if I didn't stop it. It was disgusting to read that Rose Marie hadn't objected when he referred to me as your poor weakling husband, and even more disgusting reading what he promised to do with my prudish wife, and that she was obviously looking forward to that without any objections. Rose Marie always refused any intimate acts beyond the basics, and threatened me with divorce when I asked her about trying new things. I was afraid she had some kind of mental breakdown when promising this man everything she had denied me for years. The main problem was that I had no information about her lover, no name, not where he lived, not if he had a family. During our Friday evening family fun, I asked Rose Marie, "You told me earlier that you will attend and stay overnight at some birthday party next Friday. Whose party is it and where are you going? Do I know her?" She got a visibly strange look on her face for a split second before answering, "No, you don't know her. Her name is Magdalena von Breitenschloss, and we are a gang of girls who usually see each other and have some fun at boring seminars." "Sounds fair to me. And what hotel have you booked for the night?" I asked. She told me the town, the best Western Scandia hotel there, and said, smiling, "I'm sure it will be much fun at that party, and I really hope that Maggie will not get too bad a hangover for her big family dinner on Saturday." What a liar, I thought. But at least the hotel was the same as mentioned by her co-workers when Christina heard it. However, I had made slight progress in my investigation by having a noble Maggie to check out. The next day, when Rose Marie and our girls were shopping, I searched for that nobly named Maggie, only to find out that there was no von Breitenschloss at all living in the town Rose Marie was going to. But when searching the whole country, I found two Magdalena von Breitenschloss. One was 86 years old, and the other, who might be Rose Marie's friend, was 42. But for an average guy like me, it seemed a bit strange to have a 40th birthday party for a 42-year-old woman, especially when her hometown was about 180 kilometers in the opposite direction from our home to the town where the famous party was said to be held. Rose Marie made a big mistake when she tried to impress me with a noble friend. Had she chosen a common name like Anna Johansson, there might have been plenty of them, probably even some of the right age in the area where she intended to go for her date. Nothing happened until Sunday evening when I pretended to have some work to do after Rose Marie had gone to bed. She had left her cell phone for charging in the kitchen, and as we knew each other's PIN codes, it was easy to check it. No strange pictures, text, or voice messages, but many unknown phone numbers. After my first search, Only 2 numbers, owned by men unknown to me, remained as targets for further investigation. It wasn't necessary for me to know the name of Rosemarie's lover to deal with her cheating intentions. But with a name, I could find his wife if he had one. The first number was used by a girl who had gotten her boyfriend's old iPhone when he got a new one from his job. But the second was Bingo, a Daniel Rodillo living about 165 kilometers away from the meeting hotel. That guy fit perfectly. Rosemarie and he would have almost equal distances to their date. Now it was easy to find further details about a guy with that unusual last name. Self-employed as some kind of consultant and lecturer, which brought him fair money, a 32-year-old wife, a boy 6 and a girl 4 years old, a rather high-taxed house, and 2 cars. That jerk's wife needed to know about her husband's intentions. That turned out to be an unexpected piece of cake. One co-worker of mine happened to have a sister living in the same town and area as the Rodillo family, and it was easy for her to find where Daniel's wife Annie worked. I called Annie at her job, and we came to an agreement about how to handle the information about our spouses. This was when my plan for cold revenge began to take shape. On Friday, I took the day off, but got up at the usual time and went to the garage to call Annie with my cell phone for the latest information about our actions. Rosemarie got a real surprise when she saw me still at home, but accepted my explanation about a dentist appointment later in the morning. After sending our children to school, she went to our bedroom to dress for her trip and came back in a really nice outfit. I asked her to sit down to clear up some minor misunderstandings, which she accepted after slight doubt. My first question was, "There's no room booked for you at that Scandia hotel. Why not?" "Because it was up to Melissa to book rooms. Obviously, she booked them in her own name," she replied. "No, at least not at Best Western Scandia. No such rooms booked." She gave me a smile and said, "No big deal. She's taken something cheaper to save money for us." I replied with a smile, "Sounds reasonable indeed. But I have another question, because there is no Magdalena von Breitenschloss living in that town. However, she exists, but is living about 350 kilometers away from that town. Could you please tell me why she is going such a long distance to celebrate her 40th birthday and doing that more than 2 years after it really happened?" Rosemarie stared at me for a second before saying, "Please forgive me for not telling you the truth. I'm so ashamed of my lies. The truth is that our gang is hired for waitressing at a company party. It's an innocent event, and we girls are going elsewhere for our own party when the dance begins at 10 o'clock. To avoid scandals, the catering company prefers hiring waitresses from out of town. It's just a fun and innocent experience for us, I can promise you." She wasn't bad. Very clever indeed. Not bad to come up with such a good lie in a second. Would I ever dare to trust her? Only the Lord would know. But I replied, still smiling, "That sounds like a very trustworthy explanation about a very exciting company event. Yes, it does indeed." Rosemarie gave me a bright smile and asked, "Are we ready now so I can start driving to my exotic job?" I smiled back, looked straight in her eyes before asking, "Not really, my dear Rosemarie. I don't want you to go there at all, but as both of us know that there are no legal options for me to stop you from going, I can only ask you, please do me and our girls a favor and skip going to do those stupid things you intend to do there." She hesitated for a couple of seconds before answering with a slightly irritated voice. "I really wish I could, but I've promised to do that and have to keep my promises. It's only one day." I skipped pretending to be polite and said, "May I take it as an answer that your intentions for that night really mean more to you than the future of your family?" Now she began to get a worried look on her face when she replied, "Why are you arguing? Lots of people have seen me in a swimsuit at different beaches without any objections from you. Is it so different waiting tables for a couple of hours among people who don't even know me? Your pictures can be seen on the web, so there's no reason to care about who might see them, but I didn't buy that silly story about waiting tables, though it was a darn good lie. Who could have known or even suspected that you're such a skilled liar? I was talking about your real reason for going to spend a night at that hotel. Rosemarie isn't stupid. She sighed and understood that she was playing with fire and had very low odds because I obviously knew more than had been said so far. She gave up her cheating intentions by saying, "That trip isn't worth further arguing, and I'll skip it if that makes you happy. By the way, who says that my pictures are visible on the web? Thank you for skipping that silly trip. You saved both a lot of gasoline and hopefully even increased your chances for saving our marriage, because there's no Daniel Rodillo waiting for you in room 312 at Best Western Scandia Hotel today. You ought to know that his wife Annie Rodillo and I are cooperating in this disgusting matter." "Nice photos indeed," I said, and gave her a copy of her revealing picture. She panicked and began crying. "God, Lord in heaven, what have I done?" "Please forgive me. Please say that you will forgive me. I didn't mean to humiliate you or begin any kind of affair. It was only meant to be a one-time innocent fling. I love you, only you, and will never do such a terrible, stupid thing again. Please believe me and forgive me." I looked at her coldly. "How can a poor weakling believe anything a skilled liar like you tells him? May I presume that this wasn't your first cheating? How many times before?" "Never before, that's for sure. Today was both my first and my last insane intention to have a web fling, just like many of my friends have done." "You are not, and have never been any weakling in my opinion," she sobbed. I stood up and said, "That's just Daniel's impression of me. Now I need to leave. I have some important matters to take care of." "Where are you going?" she asked, panic rising in her voice. "To meet with Annie Rodillo. We have some business to conclude." I left Rosemarie crying at the kitchen table. My revenge was already in motion. What Rosemarie didn't know was that I had been planning this for days. I had already contacted a divorce lawyer and had papers prepared. I had also withdrawn half of our savings and placed them in a separate account under only my name. The house was already on the market. I had listed it 2 days ago with instructions for the realtor to keep it quiet until today. I drove to meet Annie Rodillo at a cafe halfway between our towns. She was a petite woman with intelligent eyes and a determined expression. "Is everything set?" I asked her. She nodded. "Daniel thinks I'm at my sister's today. He's probably already checked into the hotel waiting for your wife." "Did you manage to get the room next door?" I asked. "Yes. Room 313 is mine, and I've got the equipment ready." We had planned everything meticulously. Annie had booked the room next to where Daniel was expecting to meet Rosemarie. She had already installed small cameras and audio recording devices, all legally purchased surveillance equipment for her home security business that she had registered 3 days ago. "Remember," I told her, "we need to time this perfectly." At exactly noon, Daniel received a text message from Rosemarie, actually from me using a burner phone. "I'm running late. We'll be there by 1 o'clock. Can't wait to see you." At 12:45, Annie checked into her room and made sure the recording equipment was working properly. At 1:15, Daniel received another message. "Almost there. Had to stop for gas." So excited. At 1:30, I called Daniel's phone from another burner. When he answered, I played a recording of Rosemarie's voice that I had secretly made at home, saying she was in the hotel lobby and needed his room number. 312, he said eagerly. At 1:35, there was a knock on Daniel's door. But it wasn't Rosemarie. It was the hotel manager, the head of security, and Annie Rodillo. "Mr. Rodillo, we have reason to believe you're using this hotel room for an extramarital affair, which violates our family-friendly policies," the manager said formally, reading from a script I had prepared and paid him handsomely to deliver. Daniel stammered, "There must be some mistake." That's when Annie stepped forward. "No mistake, Daniel. I know all about Rosemarie Palmwald and your plans to betray me." Daniel's face went white. "Annie, I can explain." "Save it," she said, handing him an envelope. These are divorce papers. My lawyer has already been paid, and he assures me that with the evidence we have, you'll be lucky if you get weekend visitation with the children. While this scene played out, I was already in action elsewhere. I had hired a team of movers who were at our house, loading up everything I wanted to keep. The rest, everything Rosemarie valued, was being left behind. I had also arranged for a real estate agent to meet Rosemarie at our house at 3 p.m. to explain that the house was already sold, with the closing scheduled for the end of the month. The buyer had paid a premium for a quick sale. At 4 p.m., I picked up our daughters from their after-school program and took them to my parents' house, where I had already set up temporary rooms for them. By 6 p.m., when Rosemarie would be frantically trying to reach me, I was sitting in a lawyer's office with Annie Rodillo, finalizing our coordinated divorce strategies. "The recordings from the hotel room will ensure Daniel gets minimal custody," Annie said, satisfied. "And thanks to your evidence about Rosemarie, you'll get primary custody of your daughters." "And the joint lawsuit against both of them for emotional distress?" I asked. "Filed an hour ago," my lawyer confirmed. "Given the explicit nature of their communications and the fact that they were planning to meet at a hotel, we have a strong case. It won't be worth much financially, but it will become public record, which is what you wanted." I nodded, thinking about the final piece of my plan. I had sent copies of Rosemarie and Daniel's communications to their employers, families, and friends with a simple note. "Thought you should know what kind of people they really are." At 8 p.m., I finally answered Rosemarie's call. "Where are you? Where are the girls? Why is there a sold sign on our lawn?" she screamed into the phone. "The girls are safe with my parents. As for where I am, I'm starting my new life, one without a cheating wife. The divorce papers will be delivered tomorrow. Don't bother looking for your jewelry or your family heirlooms. They're in a secure location until the court decides what's fair." "You can't do this! I didn't even go through with it," she cried. "But you would have if I hadn't caught you. Goodbye, Rosemarie. You chose Daniel over your family. Now you get to live with that choice, just without Daniel, who's currently being served divorce papers by his wife." I hung up and turned to Annie. "Ready for dinner?" "I think we've earned it." She smiled coldly. "Absolutely. After all, it's not every day you get to serve ice-cold revenge." 1 year later, I sat in my new home, watching my daughters play in the backyard. The divorce had been finalized months ago, with me getting primary custody due to Rosemarie's moral failings. She had lost her job after the scandal and was now working at a small convenience store, living in a tiny apartment, and seeing the girls only every other weekend. Daniel Rodillo hadn't fared much better. Annie had gotten everything in the divorce, including full custody of their children. He had been forced to move to another town to find work after his consulting business dried up, following the exposure of his character. Annie and I remained friends, partners in revenge who occasionally met for coffee to discuss our new lives. We never became romantically involved. Our connection was built on something else entirely, the satisfaction of knowing we had refused to be victims. Some might say my revenge was too harsh, too calculated. But as I watched my daughters laugh in the sunshine, I knew I had protected them from a woman who had been willing to throw away her family for a fling. Sometimes revenge isn't just about making yourself feel better. It's about reshaping your life into something stronger than before. Cold? Perhaps. But sometimes ice is exactly what you need to preserve what matters most. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.